So just this morning, the Department of Justice announcing that it has more than 500 people reviewing the Epstein Files, but still no date as to when they're going to be released. Excuses after excuses as to why Pamela Jo's DOJ continues to break the law being the Epstein Files Transparency Act. But there is somebody who is hard at work, laboriously, meticulously combing through the documents that have not only been released by the DOJ pursuant to the Transparency Act, but also the documents that have been provided by the subpoenas from the in response by the Epstein estate and others by House Oversight. And that's Ellie Leonard, somebody that I encountered on Substack. So impressed with how diligently and how smartly she's kind of going through the information, putting it together and making it digestible so that we can make sure that we're also not missing the latest on the Epstein Files. So I invited her here to the Katie Phang News Channel to have a conversation. Take a listen. And joining me now is somebody with whom I have been dying to have a conversation for a while. She and I were just saying before we hit the record button that we feel like we kind of know each other already, which I love because I have been following your work avidly. Ellie Leonard, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. This is great.
So Ellie, first and foremost, I'm actually going to go and check out your book, Death of a Mayfly, which is your latest book, which I know is fiction. So we'll get into that. But you're a writer. You're actually a filmmaker. I went and I checked out your website, in addition to obviously being a subscriber and hanging out on your Substack. But you've done a lot of really cool stuff. But one of the things that I really want to explore with you, which we'll do in a minute, is the work you've been doing vis-a-vis the Epstein Files and the tranches that have been released. But let some people know about who you are and what you got going on.
So, hi, I'm Ellie. I am a Substacker. I'm a writer. I came to Substack because I was just sadly floating away on what's called the submission phase. And it's where you write a book and then you're trying to convince people to read it. And it's just heartbreaking all the way through. There's no way to explain it. I write fiction, but I write stories for my kids. This is kind of where my love is. And somebody said, well, why don't you try out Substack? And I've launched into the world of nonfiction, unbeknownst to me. But I've had a small business for years where I've worked with journalists and I've worked with filmmakers and I transcribe interviews for a lot of documentaries. And I won't go into the list of the ones I've worked on, but you can look me up. And then this year,
I will interrupt. They are pretty impressive folks, so you should go check out the list. But go on.
Yeah. I've gotten to work with some really, really amazing people. And then this last year, I actually got to work like in the field as a filmmaker for the first time, which was very exciting. So that we have a little project we're working on this year that we hope will come out next year. So that's been really fun.
And Ellie, part of the reason why I wanted to explore your background quickly was the work you've been doing over on Substack, really combing through the Epstein Files as they've been released, has been spectacular. And I think it really speaks to not only the fact that you are a writer, and so you understand kind of how to structure and set up the information that you're disseminating and delivering to us in the public, but you do have a discerning eye from an investigative standpoint to kind of like look for and find these things. Tell folks kind of why you thought it was important to really take a fine-tooth comb to every single page that has been released thus far by the government.
Before I started going through the Epstein Files, I was working on Project 2025 and I was working on like the big, beautiful bill. And I'm always of the mindset that a lot of this stuff is made to be really muddled and really hard to read so that people don't read it, right? We're not a country made of PhDs. We are working folk, we're blue collar. And so I just really want people to be informed. I struggled with the last election. I just felt like so much of the issues that we've gone through in these elections have been based on people not having access to information or not understanding the information that's in front of them. And so when I was working on those two documents, I really went through and I simplified them and I said, look, this is easy to understand if we make it easy to understand. And so when the Epstein Files came out, I thought, you know what, I can just keep doing that. I think a lot of the idea of them finally releasing them to us is this hope of America being blind and being a little bit stupid and just not looking into things, and maybe they can slide it under us and we won't recognize the things that are in there. And I'm not a big user of AI. I don't like doing like the summary AI and stuff like that. I know a lot of people like that and it works for them, but for me, I really just want to be like boots on the ground and just see the documents. And so I was spending, I was going to work during the day and then coming home at night, putting my kids to bed and sitting for like 2 to 3 hours and just scrolling these documents. And there are a lot of them. And now thankfully I'm at a place where I don't have to go to work. I can just scroll and I can just look for things, but there are Easter eggs in these documents where I'll find something at like 12 o'clock at night and I'll just go, okay, I need to go search on the internet. I need to see if anybody else has seen this document. Nobody else has seen it. There's an email. There's, there's any source of court documents. And then I'll say, I think I found something, and I'll post it or I'll send it to somebody that I think has a bigger platform and a bigger voice. And I'll say, do you think this is something? Because I'm not a big breaking news person. I'm not a scoop writer. I'm just digging for information and I want to find out what it means and I want it to help somebody in the long run. And so there's a lot of that in there. I've found a lot of that. So I have a lot of little note-taking Excel spreadsheets and things on the side where I find things and then I dump them and then I go back and kind of do an analysis on what I've found and hopefully it helps somewhere.
So Ellie, you got the jump on what was going to be my follow-up question, but you kind of addressed it, which is the method to your madness, right? So it literally hasn't been anything particularly scientifically complex. It literally is, here's the first tranche that was dropped. Let's start on page 1, whatever. And however it's been bait stamped, which is very confusing too in and of itself too, by the way. But how start on page 1, check it out, read it. I know that I've gone through the tranches, not as carefully as you. And there's a lot of duplicative information, right? There's a lot of copies of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that's also been publicly revealed earlier. But it is interesting because it reminds me of when, I continue to be a trial lawyer, but when I've had particularly voluminous document heavy cases, they'll stick stuff, needle in a haystack style, in big document dumps. And I've been reluctant, Ellie, to use the phrase document dump when it comes to the Epstein files that have been released and rolled out so far, because I don't want to be insulting, right? I don't think it's a dump, but it is, to your point, strategic. The DOJ wants to park important information that they weren't able to scrub, redact, erase, eliminate. They sometimes want to drop it, maybe in a PDF that happens to be 400 pages long, and you're just, okay, I've seen this, and you kind of scroll through it, and maybe you don't see it. So tell me kind of what triggers your interest then while you're going through it, because you don't have encyclopedic knowledge, although I feel like you're building that encyclopedia. Right. I
think I have some sort of there's a little bit of a photographic memory thing going on in my family that's probably helping me out along the way here. I don't come at this with a journalism degree. I don't come at this with any kind of major degree that's helping me do this other than
don't apologize for having it though. I want to be very clear. I do not have a journalistic degree. So keep on
all right. You have a law degree. I have a classics degree.
No, listen, in a lot of ways you're better equipped than me, but I'm sorry to interrupt. Please go on.
I think a lot of this is just like an analytical mindset. I go through it and I really, especially my favorite things to transcribe in these files have been the emails, and just because they are meant to be complicated. Nothing is chronological. And I feel like they did that very much on purpose. They dumped things all out of order. They made PDFs that are single pages. So if you have 4,000 pages in a drop, they'll make a single page PDF. So I go through and I combine them into a single PDF so I can scroll. But something that has been extremely helpful is, now that I've sort of built up my Substack base a little bit, I have put out the word daily that everybody is capable of doing this. And if you have 10 minutes after work, if you have an hour, if you've got your coffee in the morning, like, here's my Dropbox link to this file of 8 folders of 30,000 documents. Pick a folder and just go look for 10 minutes. And people have brought me the wildest information. And I tell them to start in the middle. I say, don't start at the beginning. Everyone's starting at the beginning. Start at the end. Start in the middle. Start somewhere that you can, start somewhere, because it's not an order. It doesn't matter where you start. And people are bringing me the wildest documents that I'm just like, holy cow, nobody has talked about this. And then I'll ask them, I say, do you want me to name you for finding this? And some say yes, and some say no. But it's so helpful to have more eyes, because you have 1,000 FBI agents, right, redacting, doing whatever they're doing. Then you have 340 million people outside the FBI who are scrolling. And there are so many unique skills that are people bringing this, like people who are paralegals, people who have computer degrees, people who can look up metadata. Like, there's so many unique skills. And the more people we've been able to gather together to look together, we have just found really, really, really amazing stuff.
So, what's incredible about what you just said is this. I obviously am kind of a breaking news kind of person, and I kind of go deeply analytical on a lot of this news on my YouTube channel where we are. And part of it is what I have seen, which is the kind of like hijacking of hundreds of lawyers at the Department of Justice. And the DOJ has made these representations to federal judges. Oh, this is so laborious and so time consuming, but judge, we believe in, the transparency. And so we're going to do it. And yet they still have been unable to get through what they currently have. And then suddenly, like out of the blue, we found another 2 million plus, or maybe 5 million. It depends on who you listen to, which is why I was thrilled to see Ro Khanna and Tom Massey saying, where's a special master? And, the deadline's actually today for the government to respond. And in my opinion, I think it's kind of neat because it kind of puts the government in a pickle, right? It's you either support the special master or you oppose it. And if you oppose it, it of course fits with the idea that you're trying to hide stuff. So Ellie, considering the fact though that how many times do you think now you've actually gone through what has since far been publicly released?
I mean, it's continuous. It's continuous every night. I haven't gotten through it all. I every night I sit down for hours and I scroll because I have to set aside time to write. I have to set aside time where I talk to people, and then I set aside time to like scroll and take notes. And so it's continuous because I know that those next files are looming. And on that point, they've known about those millions of files for a long time because guess what? There's emails in the files that talk about the millions of files from 2020. They've known.
Explain that to the people that may not be aware of that, because that's really important. Ellie.
Okay. So you have, as part of these files, you have both emails back and forth from the FBI agents during the case, prior and post arrest of Jeffrey Epstein. And then you have all the emails from the lawyers back and forth about the case, which is very interesting to watch it work out chronologically, like through different events that we now know and are very familiar with. We're seeing them happen in real time for these lawyers and legal teams. But one of those things is they start to search for evidence. They start to have raids. They start to gather evidence. And in that, they're saying, we're missing things. These files have been broken. These links don't work. We have over 1 million files. Where are they? They keep telling us they're coming. This is 2020. And I read something yesterday that said that they had one, I don't know how they describe it, like digital machine. I'm assuming they mean a computer, which Epstein had like 38 computers in a single house, had 800,000 emails on it, 800,000 emails. And it's like, where are those emails? Because we keep seeing things that are about other emails, or we see someone asking a question in an email, and then we don't have the next email that gives the answer to the question. So we need all of that so that we can put those in chronological order and start to see the threads and the conversations, and then we can make sense of all this. But we can also find the people in there that are not supposed to be in there, which has happened multiple times. Like the Larry Summers email thread is wild. The Michael Wolff email thread is wild. Like these are people that I didn't expect to see in the grand scheme of this story, and all of a sudden I'm seeing them off the record and with their guard down, and it's very interesting.
So Ellie, what's interesting is that the Epstein Files Transparency Act, as we know, enacted November 19th. The deadline was December 19th. As we sit here on January 16th, almost a month later, the federal government, more specifically Department of Justice under Pamela Joe, continues to break the law. Let's just put that, out there, which we know. But I will always give credit where credit is due. I spoke to Congressman Robert Garcia just 2 days ago, and he really has been leading the charge on the Democratic side at House Oversight to get info. Have you been able to reconcile some of that? Because that was incredibly powerful and I thought helpful information that came from the Epstein estate and pursuant to some of the subpoenas, although of course we didn't get shit from a lot of people from the subpoenas. But have you been able to reconcile that document drop of information from House Oversight that still is on a rolling basis and some of the stuff that we've seen come out pursuant to the Epstein Files Transparency Act?
So I have the Democratic House social media, so I have them on my notifications. So whenever they say something, my phone gets pinged. Yes, they have done a really good job. And a part of that, and I'm glad you brought it up, is the Epstein estate, because that is a really significant piece of this story. That is not owned by the DOJ. That is not information that they have any control over. That is probably not very redacted information because it's private. Epstein has, it's like his last will and trust. It's everything he owned is the Epstein 1953 estate, which is the year he was born. And it bounced around as far as who was in charge of that estate. But right now it is Darren and Dyke and Richard Kahn, which are his accountant and his lawyer. They are in charge of it.
Who are about to get the subpoenas from House Oversight.
I sure hope so.
Yes. It's been passed. They just haven't drafted the subpoenas themselves.
Right.
So yeah.
They are some people who really, really need to talk, because this is where we just got all those emails from Steve Bannon and Larry Summers and Kathy Rummer. Like, that's where we got all if you want to call it juicy, it feels like a terrible word, but like, that's where we got all the information that actually led to something. That's where we got the birthday book. That's where we've gotten a lot of these really big digital dumps of pictures and audio and video. Like, we've gotten it from them, whereas we've gotten these little drips and drabs of kind of dry legal documents from the DOJ, which I'm sure is very purposeful. And so that's a very, very important piece of this puzzle, because we don't have to get through as much red tape to get to the Epstein estate. And there may very well be more in the Epstein estate than there is at the DOJ. So I think that's significant.
Yeah, I actually didn't note it on social, probably should have. Comer said the other day when he was bitching about the Clinton subpoenas, that the estate had produced its stuff and was done. But Garcia, who I trust, not Comer, said to me on Wednesday, no, we're still getting stuff. I specifically asked because as a trial lawyer, I'm interested, right? I'm always interested in what is produced pursuant to a subpoena, which, by the way, is still also a legal vehicle, just as much as the Transparency Act is, although frankly, the act is a law that, again, continues to be violated. Ellie, I love the idea that this has almost been like a crowd-funded moment for you. So I have two questions for you. One, how can people be a part of this? Because, I was reading this piece the other day, and it was like, the lawyers are being tasked at DOJ to have to review a certain number of documents a day. And they were complaining. And listen, I understand too. They're like, we also have other crimes we need to be prosecuting here. But like, if people want to be a part of your army, this effort to be able to kind of help, like how can they find out like where you are, what you're doing?
Okay. So I'm on Substack under the Panicked Writer, or you can just look me up as Ellie Leonard. And it's everything I do is free. You don't have to pay for it. Like I love paid subscriptions, but you don't have to be. I just drop information because I think everybody should have access to it. But a lot of people have asked, and I try to keep reposting, but you can land in my DMs as well, have asked for access to these files so that they can scroll as much as they can on their own time when they have free time, because it is really interesting. And I think it feels really good to be helpful and be investigative. It's very purpose driven. And so what I did is, again, I took all the files and I combined them into a PDF so that they're easier to see all at once. And also that makes it so if they delete anything or redact anything after the fact, they can't do that to my files. My files have already been downloaded. So people have access to them, and I can give them the link and they can just start scrolling, and it's amazing. Like, I have a lot of lawyers in my Substackers. I have paralegals. I have somebody who came in and they said, I'm a psychoanalyst and I would like to look at these files and start to pick apart what people were thinking. And I said, that's amazing. Let's do that. And so as many people as we can get together, I guarantee you we have more than they have working at the DOJ for this.
But it's what a sad reflection, though, that's what it takes to have true transparency and honesty in this effort to give some justice to the victims and survivors of Epstein, Maxwell, and others. I always like to say the and others part, and I always like to include the Ghislaine Maxwell part, because I feel like people just kind of stick in that lane of Epstein only, and I'm like, no.
I have a lot more. That's probably Epstein. Another talk, because I have a lot.
That's a whole other conversation you're not going to have. But you were very casual about it, but I don't want you to be casual, because you do need to be supported. And so if people also want to help you to make sure that you can continue to do this work, they can have the chance to be a paid subscriber for you, right, at Substack?
Yes. Right now I actually have, so I normally am just like $5 a month. So I try to, give at least $5 a month worth of content, which I hope I do. But right now I have it on 25% off. So it's $3.75 a month.
Amazing. Okay, so Ellie Leonard, this is the first of many times that you and I are going to hang out here. I just really wanted to kind of blend my world. I too spend a lot of time on Substack. I love the community that I've built there. I wanted to bring you here to my YouTube world so that people can learn about you and also kind of support what you're doing, because I think it's very important. So Ellie Leonard, thanks for being here today, and that's for getting me caught up. I appreciate it. It was great to see you.
Talk to you later, Katie.
Katie Phang here. We launched the Katie Phang News Channel in partnership with the Midas Touch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.